Hey friends, Michaela here. I just got done filming an interview for our next episode of Reiki Crossroads and Connections. That's our podcast-like video series here on the channel. And this one is with Linda Easton-Waller, who is the owner of Gullyrumpus Farm here in the Sacramento area where I live. We had a really fantastic conversation about her practices that bring together her business life with her spirituality, and also the spiritual importance of engaging in our own food production in some way. But I just wanted to jump on here ahead of time and just give you a heads up that for a really brief part of that conversation, we do jump into the topic of butchering animals for food. Not in a whole lot of detail, but we talk about our experiences with that practice. And if that's a topic you'd rather not dig into, you'd rather not hear talked about, that is totally fine. So I'm going to put the timestamps down below in the description that just lets you know when that conversation happens in the video so that you can jump past it if you would prefer to do so. All right, without any further ado, let's get on with the conversation. Hello, friends. Welcome back to Reiki Crossroads and Connections, an exploration of the many ways that we can bring practices, perspectives, mindsets, and lifestyles into our daily life that help us to feel grounded, to feel spacious, to feel connected, and to remember ourselves in the day-to-day of our everyday life. And we're doing that through conversations with a Reiki teacher and practitioners in a wide range of methodologies, of business areas, and of strategies that in some way help us to bring these ways of being into our life. So today I am really excited to welcome Linda Easton-Waller to our space. Welcome.
Hi, Michaela. I'm happy to be here.
Absolutely. And I love the conversation that's brewing between us here. And I'm particularly excited because we get to bring together two, real passions in my life, and the ways in which they blend in my life and the way they've blended in your life and in your business. So you are a farmer, you are a musician, you're an educator, and you are a person for whom it is important to bring a spiritual perspective into your life and a way of knitting those things together. I think that you've done that beautifully in ways that inspire me. And so I really am excited to have this conversation, to share with folks that you don't necessarily have to be working a job or running a business that explicitly has a spiritual perspective to it in order to weave these parts of your life together. In fact, it's probably even more important, if that's true for you, that you consciously put practices in place in order to bring your spiritual life into your work. And Linda, I think you have a lot to share with us about that. So I'd love to just invite you to start by telling a little bit of your story, how you came to the work that you're doing, a little bit about the structure of your farm, and how you approach your work as a spiritual practice.
Thanks, Michaela. I am really excited to be here with you guys today because this is something that is the spiritual aspect of my business is something that's really important to me, but I don't get to talk about it. I kind of drop hints about it every now and again when I'm talking to people and peers who have farming businesses or quail related enterprises or things like that. But I'm afraid that a lot of what I'm going to say to people is a little too woo-woo. And so it's nice to be here in a setting where I can just express those things and know that they will be well received. So thank you for this. So you mentioned that I'm a farmer, and so I'm gonna introduce myself by telling you a little bit about how I got into farming and things that brought me here to where I am. In 2016, I was a hot mess. My youngest had just left home. My father had died, and for whatever other reasons, I completely fell apart and just went into a state of deep clinical depression. It was a very dark time in my life, but luckily my partner, Bobby, he was not in that same space. And so he was out looking for our next adventures because we were newly empty nesters. And he decided that what he wanted to do was go live on a houseboat down in the Sacramento River Delta area. So he asked me if that's what I wanted to do. And like any depressed person would say, I'm like, yeah, whatever. I don't care. So we went, and it was literally out in the middle of nowhere, away from everything. And it was the best thing to happen to me. It was just what I needed, to kind of unplug, disconnect, to get away from everything familiar and retreat. And we were there for about 3 years. And after a while, I started doing things that helped me connect to the land. Interestingly enough, even though I was on water, literally, and our backyard, we got to watch the salmon run up the river and the sea lions chasing the salmon up the river and the otters, and it was just beautiful. But I hatched chickens on the boat, and traded some work for and put them behind the community church across the street from our dock, and then had bees at a friend's house in the next town over. And it was raising a garden in a community space, and just kind of did things that helped me connect to the land. And my husband, Bobby, he noticed, like, the more I did these things, the happier I got, the more grounded I got, and the less depressed that I was. So he decided, for my benefit, to leave the houseboat and go back to land and look for a farm.
Wow.
So through a series of financial miracles, we were able to get a 2.5-acre farm just north of Sacramento. And we moved in 2019. It took me about 6 months to kind of fix up the house and get some basic things done. And then the pandemic hit. So all of us had lots of time for self-reflection, and I was, starting to think about what do I want to do here on this farm? What do I want to build? So I came across a couple of things happened. One is that I got really clear on what my purpose in life was. Like, it took me 55 years to figure it out, but I finally did. And I came up with a mission statement. So do you want to know what my mission in life is?
Please.
Okay, it's really simple, and it can apply to anything that I'm doing. But my mission is to bring joyful experiences to myself and others. So I put myself first in that, because if I'm bringing joyful experiences to myself, then I can naturally extend that to other people. So I got really clear on that, and was starting to think about farm enterprises. And I came across this article, I think it was in Forbes magazine. It was about a woman named Kat Norton, who otherwise known as Miss Excel. Have you heard of her?
I haven't.
Okay, she is so inspirational. She had a corporate job, where she was doing training in Excel as in spreadsheets, right?
Yeah.
And she decided one day during the pandemic that she wanted to do a TikTok video. She had never done one before. She danced and put music to a split screen where she was kind of showing you how to do these things in Excel, but she made it really fun. And her videos went viral. And she has since created these wonderful online classes for Excel. She makes, the last I heard, it was about $2 million a year. She bought her dream home. She got to quit her corporate job. And it's fabulously inspirational. In this article, I there was a couple things that kind of piqued my interest. And the first one was that she said that as a child, she was extremely shy and that she had these limiting beliefs about herself. And once she was able to identify those limiting beliefs and replace them with healthier beliefs, then she was able to get over her shyness, get over her insecurities, and just be herself. And look at what happened. And it was so amazing. And so also she mentioned that in her work, before she started working on a video, this was after she was kind of established and she was away from her corporate job, that she gave herself time to really get into the zone and to really get into a creative space where her energy was high and that she was full of inspiration. And she didn't specify what she did during that time, but she said she'd give herself like up to an hour to really get into that space and then do her work. She could never do that at her corporate job, but she was able to do it in her work, and it, you know, the results speak for themselves. She's been very successful. So I thought, oh my gosh, that was the first thing that put the idea into my head. Like, what if work wasn't just work? What if it was a spiritual practice? And I was kind of on fire about this idea. And in my work life, I had been able to work for these fabulous women, Rachel Coleman at Signing Time, the creators of Baby Signs, and like these women were very powerful, they were visionaries, and I got to help them manifest those visions and achieve their dreams. And I was so excited because I realized, like, this is my turn to do that for myself, and to create something that's uniquely mine, and I can do it any way that I want to, and manifest that. So that's kind of what brought me to that point in 2020. Now, 3 years later, I have 3 farm enterprises. And first of all is Gullyrumpus Farm. We do quail, Coturnix quail, and American breast chicken. They're a dual purpose bird. I love getting people connected with poultry that can help them become self-sufficient in some way, whether it's through eggs or for eggs and meat, because in the pandemic, we all experienced food shortages, and afterwards the inflation and the egg shortages, the high egg prices. So it makes me feel really good to be able to connect people with resources and skills that they can use to be more resilient in times like that. So I have Gullyrumpus Farm. Another enterprise that I have that you were instrumental in helping me start was Hatching at Home. Michaela was my first customer for Hatching at Home, and it was a delightful experience. And with she and her daughter helped go through the program with me for the first time, and I got to know how to support them, and they gave me some wonderful feedback. So Hatching at Home is a program that I run with my friend Wendy at Feather Baby Farms in Shingle Springs. She's a chicken breeder, and we set people up with an incubator and fertile eggs, whether those are quail or chicken, and a hatching kit, a brooder kit, so they can experience the joy of watching new life emerge and then taking care of those little lives for a week. And then people can return the kit and the chicks to the farm, or they can keep their chicks. And so that's the other one. And then the third one is Quail University. So it's an educational platform that I've created with Jasmine from Time and Timber Homestead and Zach from My Shire Farm in helping people become more self-sufficient through raising quail. So those are the 3 enterprises that I have. And I just mention those briefly to you because they are each in their own way. Those are things that do feed my soul and bring me joy and bring other people joy in different ways.
Yeah, thank you so much for that overview. It was really I've known you for most of that journey that you've just described. I think I met you, maybe you were just about to move to the houseboat, or you had already. And so I've gotten to just kind of from the background, from the distance, watch these enterprises come to being. But it's only been until recently that I've gotten to hear more of the intimate side of the heart and the spirit of why you followed that particular dream and where it came from. And I know in a moment we're going to talk a little bit about the specific things that you do that you've incorporated into your life, that are bridging these gaps between our business life and our spiritual life.
Mhm.
Looking forward to getting into that. But I wanted to just kind of just rest on a few of the things that you shared here that really jumped out to me as I got to take this tour back through your journey with you. The first thing that really jumped out was about your mission statement and the way that it mirrors so beautifully the foundational precept for the system of Reiki, which is just for today, I'm compassionate for myself and for others. And I love that you emphasize that in your mission statement, it's to create joyful experiences for yourself and others, and emphasizing that need to feed your own soul, your own joy, your own heart, your own body first, and then let the outpouring, the overflow, the abundance of that level of self-compassion, self-joy, they're really intermingled, be the vehicle through which you can share with other people. And it's such a simple framing, but it's so powerful, and it can be so life-changing for people who, have a history like mine, which was very much about front-loading a kind of helpfulness and doing for other people, and kind of keeping myself in the background, and really kind of approaching it from the opposite perspective, that if I do things for other people, but from an anxious place, right? Not from a generous place necessarily. There's generosity there, but quite a bit of anxiousness and quite a bit of like lack mentality that I am aware of was present for me. So I'm outwardly being giving and generous to other people, but really what's in my heart was a lot of lack and lack of sufficiency and anxiety. And so, that simple framing of, hey, let's take a look at these empty places here for a while and see if we can fill them in ways that don't burden other people with that, but that really recruit community in healthy ways, and then let that abundance flow out to other people. So I loved your sharing that framing. It really resonated with my life. And then this like unfolding realization that working with life, right? Directly working with life, which is what we do when we garden, when we farm, when we're engaged in those kinds of enterprises, that impacted your well-being in really profound ways in a time when that was incredibly important for you. Again, that mirrors my experience very, very closely. That out of great times of fear, of depression, of difficulty is when I would turn back to the garden, and that was true. This most recent time, I also in 2020 kind of really turned back to working with the land, and then that incredible particular pressure and challenge and opportunity that happened in 2020. The incredible difficulty that so many people face, the incredible disruption of our lives collectively and in very personal ways. And then at the same time, the opportunity that created for many people, not for everybody, but for many people, to take that pause and that point of reflection. And, for many people, myself included, a focus on that intersection between the brokenness of our food systems, the fact that, it didn't actually take that much to disrupt our food supplies, right? And going into Trader Joe's and there's not a single package of eggs or carton of milk on the shelf, right? Which, I think for many of us growing up in the West, was a pretty unheard of scenario, even though logically speaking, of course, it's always a possibility, but we just became accustomed to this free flow of resources that we didn't have to work particularly hard to access, right? And we didn't have to feel particularly connected to in order to access. All of a sudden, they become scarce, they become precious. And I remember, I had my chickens at the time. I didn't have my garden yet. Hadn't reactivated my garden yet, but just the security of like, okay, I have eggs. I have eggs, and I could have meat if I needed to. Was very grounding, and it was very humbling to realize, on the one hand, how fragile that system is, and how that's really a serious challenge for us as modern people, and at the same time, how much abundance that we can lean into. Even, I live in the suburbs. I have friends who live in apartments who have, little gardens and whatever. That actually filling some of those needs is not as hard as we think, right? But it does take leaning into community. This idea of self-sufficiency that is very popular, particularly within homesteading communities.
Yeah. And I use that phrase, knowing that the self-sufficiency, knowing that that is a myth, that nobody can be
Right.
self-sufficient, that we're, but I think I'd like to frame it in terms of resiliency.
Yeah,
That
absolutely.
as a community, we can be more resilient by having backyard quail, backyard chickens, or a garden. Things like
Well,
that.
and when you said it, it's like I almost didn't even hear it that way, because what I heard was community sufficiency. Because what you were describing was, partnering with these other homesteaders and farms, engaging with enterprises that actively engages the community in their own education and their own production. And so, like, what I heard as you're describing it was community sufficiency. And that for me, that is not only about our sustainability and access to resources, but it is about our hearts and our minds and our spirits, and the ways in which we can seek joyful interaction inside of the mundanities of putting food on our plates, right? And that when we really access some piece of community sufficiency, whatever that looks like for us, wherever we are, that there's this inherent joy, and I would say this inherent spiritual aspect of doing that. So I heard all of that in your story. I wanted to highlight it, and then invite you to go into a little bit more detail about the pieces that are meaningful to you.
All right. And before I jump into that, you reminded me while you were talking that you did learn how to butcher quail with me, and that experience was you talked about intimacy. Like when you're raising your own food, you're very intimate with that, and especially when you're hatching, you're bringing new life in, but also with that comes the responsibility of being able to usher that life out if the need be it arises, right?
Yeah.
Whether the food or the chick is suffering, or the bird got hurt, or a predator got it, or whatever, and sharing that experience with you was really meaningful to me, because it was a difficult thing to do, but you wanted to know how, so that if that if that need ever arose again, that you could do that. And so I just want to commend you for your bravery in that, and that farming can connect us to life, but also it's connected me very much so with death. Yeah, and we're going to touch on it a little bit later.
Yeah, and I appreciate you bringing that forward. That memory was also just kind of over here in the background for me, because I think it's an essential piece, like that piece that you just said, that farming connects us to life, and it equally connects us to death, right? If we raise livestock, we raise dead stock, right? Like that is part of the realities, and that's actually part of the spiritual value, I think, of engaging in our food production, because our modern system has allowed us to take a step out of that cycle, like a lot of steps out of that cycle, and really divorce ourselves from that reality, and to really disconnect our heart from the reality that no matter what kind of diet we follow, what kind of, dietary preferences we have, whether we're vegetarian or a vegan, or we're a meat eater, something has got to die for us to live. Like that's a fact of our physical reality. And it's part of the dysfunction of our society that we have decided collectively, right? Consciously, unconsciously, to step outside of that reality and to say, I don't actually have to look at that, right? And people have, of course, wide ranges of levels of consciousness about that, and it's a deep issue that people have many different perspectives on. I respect a lot of different choices as far as people's relationship with meat eating and so on. For me, though, in order to really reconcile that, and a farming mentor of mine, Jessica Sowards at Roots of Refuge Farm, she always says that her family's choice was to align their appetites with their convictions, right? To bring, what they felt was the best thing nutritionally for their bodies in alignment with their values. And for them, what that meant was to raise their own meat and to take responsibility for it, to take responsibility for those animals having the best life that they could possibly have and the best death that they could possibly have.
Yeah.
It's
And
difficult.
a greater sense of appreciation for what that animal is giving to me. I eat a lot less meat now that I'm raising poultry, and I've been a part of butchering hogs and rabbits and chickens and quail.
More
And
costly.
yeah, I recognize the sacrifice that they make to feed my body, and I'm less inclined to eat meat now, just because.
Yeah, because it's more meaningful and a little more heavy. And that experience with you with the quail was actually my second experience butchering. And the first experience was with a round of chickens that me and our mutual friend Hope raised a couple of years earlier. And that was a great experiment. That was really what launched us into, more of this lifestyle, and was really at the beginning of her journey as a farmer. And I remember that being like, I was convicted. I wanted to take responsibility. I wanted to be part of the process. I wanted to learn, I wanted that level of sufficiency and responsibility, but I was terrified on butchering day. I was avoidant on butchering day. I held back. I think I maybe kind of, took the life of maybe two of our 30 birds, and I held back and let the other two do the rest. And I didn't feel in good integrity about that, right? Because I'd taken on this endeavor, and then like the hardest part of it, I really just kind of stepped back and let other people do for the most part. And so, part of asking you to share your knowledge with quail was that it's like I needed a do-over on that. I need to like step into greater responsibility. And the thing that made the shift for me was my Reiki practice. We talked about that a little bit, that, I didn't have that as well dialed in the first time, or at least I didn't consciously bring my practice into that experience the first time. But that second time with you, I knew very clearly that if I was going to be settled in my heart about being in this experience, and I was going to be in good integrity about it, I needed to call on, this practice that helps me to be grounded, to be spacious, and to be connected. And just really, took that time to get my feet on the ground and steady my muscles and steady my breath, align my breath with my movement. And it made all the difference in being able to be in that experience. Hope and I just did another round of meat chickens recently, and it was a completely different experience for me as far as that ability to kind of stay grounded and calm and take responsibility for what I had, taken on. So I just wanted to thank you for that opportunity, because like, again, the difference between that first endeavor and this most recent one is like night and day as far as my resilience inside of that decision.
Yeah, and it's a process. It's a process of coming to terms and being at peace with, bringing a life into the world, and then, recognizing when that life is complete, and making sure that the exit is as done as quickly and as peacefully as possible. So yeah. All right. All right. Well, going back to our conversation about a business, having a business as a spiritual practice, I thought back over the last 3 years and thought, well, what do I do on a daily basis to bring that spiritual practice into work? Right. And so there are 3 things that I do. So I want to share those with you. And the first thing is that every day I say 3 things, either in my head or out loud. If I'm driving in the car, I'm going to say them out loud at the top of my lungs. And these are things that really ground me in different ways. So the first thing that I say is I say it 3 times. I have everything I need. I have everything I need. I have everything I need. And that immediately puts me into a place of gratitude and makes me acknowledge all of the many things, physical possessions, but also the people in my life and the all of the blessings along the way that I've experienced and received. And that really, I'm not going hungry. I have a roof over my head. I have, I am blessed. And so that puts me in that state of mind. The second mantra is, after I have everything that I need, is everything that I want comes easily to me. So everything I want comes easily to me, and everything I want comes easily to me. And that puts me in a state of excitement and a state of belief that I can create my own life, that I can, that the things that I want will happen, that I deserve them, that they're coming, they're manifesting. It puts me in this really positive state of mind. Yeah. And then the third one is, and you'll recognize this if you watch any of the Abraham Hicks videos, everything is always working out for me. So everything is always working out for me. Everything is always working out for me. And what that does for me is that when things don't go the way that I want them to, in the past, I used to go, oh, this sucks. I can't believe that this happened. This isn't supposed to happen. I am angry about it. I've got to do something. I got all judgy about it, right? Like, this is a bad thing. And now when things don't go the way that I want, saying that everything is always working out for me, it makes me step back and not judge it and say, okay, this is something I didn't expect. And maybe it's pushing me in a direction that I need to go, and I don't know it. So I don't see the value of this particular experience yet, but I'm gonna, and it's gonna work out for me. So saying those 3 things in the morning to myself just kind of grounds me and puts me in a good place to start the rest of the day. So my mantras.
I love the simplicity of that and the way that it is so clearly connected to really profound states of mind, right? So beginning with that, fundamental reality that everything we need, we have. And that doesn't always feel true. Right? Sometimes there's things that we feel that we need that we don't actually have in that moment. But fundamentally, everything that I need, I have. And then, as you said, that shifts your mindset into gratitude, which there's so much research on the physiological and emotional and spiritual benefits of the feeling of gratitude. It's also the 3rd precept in the system of Reiki. Just for today, I'm grateful. It shows up in, practically every spiritual tradition, right? It's just fundamentally a necessary state of mind for our well-being. And then I'm curious about this second one. I have a question about this second one, where you say, everything I want comes easily to me. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that we work with a lot within the system of Reiki, that is coming from the esoteric, like Buddhist origins of the system, and can feel a little bit, again, like esoteric and kind of like, what does that have to do with my life? But, we love bringing that down to the practical, like, actually, this is what it has to do with your life. And so the concept that's coming up for me is non-duality. And the idea that we often see the world in these oppositional ways. It's part of our survival. It's part of how our brains are developed to kind of categorize things and understand something in contrast to something else. It's very functional in a lot of ways. But it also can get in our way in a lot of ways. And so when you say everything that I want is easy, comes easily to me, what was the exact phrasing?
Everything I want comes easily to me. Mhm.
And then you have an experience in your business or in your life that's really freaking hard. I'm sure it happens, right?
Yeah,
I'm sure it
yeah,
happens that
yeah,
you're trying to, bring something together. You're going to collaborate in some way. You're trying to make something happen. You're trying to, like the conversation we just had about processing animals, right? That's hard. I'm sure you run into things that are like, objectively speaking, really, really hard, right?
yeah.
And yet there's this mantra, right? And so I wonder if you could talk about the way that paradox, that like oppositional, states of mind possibly come together for you and like soften into a less dualistic place, or maybe they don't.
Well, when I have those difficult experiences, I revert to the third mantra, which is everything is always working out for me. So I trust that 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 it is going to work out, that I'm going to make the best of it, and go on from there, and not dwell a lot on the, like just see it as something that happened, not as like a bad thing. Uh, I don't, I don't really know how to answer that question other than like, I do believe that we create our own realities with our thoughts. And so everything that I want comes easily to me. And if I'm focused on conflict,
Yeah.
and I'm focused on being angry, I'll just get more of that. So I get what I want, right? And it makes me be a little bit more careful about being intentional about putting out there what it is that I want. Because if the law of attraction, states that we're like, again, this comes from the Abraham Hicks videos, which I listen to every day a little bit for inspiration because they just feed my soul.
Mm.
But that idea of it is our birthright here to get what we want. We are creators. We, create things first through thoughts and then through our actions. And so that second statement just helps me step back and just be aware of what it is I'm asking for from the world.
I love that. I mean, yeah, I think that was a beautiful reconciliation of those seeming opposites, right? Firstly, that the three statements reinforce each other and they interact, that they're dynamic, they're in relationship with each other. They're not separate individual statements, right? They don't have anything to do with each other. They come together and reinforce each other, back each other up when needed, right? So when things are really hard, well, I have everything I need, right? And everything,
Yeah, yeah.
and everything is working out, right? And so again, if it feels hard right now, that's because my perspective is right here on this difficulty. But if I pull my perspective back, I'll see that ultimately everything is working out for me. And so it becomes less hard because I'm putting space around it. I'm diffusing it by taking this perspective that ultimately everything is working out.
Yeah.
And I think that actually really illustrates, this idea that these practices are there to make us feel grounded, to make us feel spacious, and to feel connected, right?
Yeah.
We kind of see that in that progression. And the way in which those simple statements focus your attention on, not to divert from reality, not to be like, oh, I'm ignoring that hard stuff over there, not at all, to be engaged in life and what you need to be making decisions about and taking action on, but to be focusing your attention on the ways in which those statements guide your attention. Yeah, that feels really clear, and I can definitely see how the dynamic relationship between those three statements really brings forward this ability to be with this seeming these roadblocks that can come up when things feel really hard,
Mhm.
which they inevitably do when we're trying to run a business.
Oh, right. Yeah. Yeah. And I guess I kind of envision them more not as roadblocks, but as like with a pinball machine, where you kind of like going along and then you hit something and it takes you off into a different trajectory.
Yeah.
But, you still might hit the jackpot. And so it's just a different way of getting to where you wanted to go. But also I take full responsibility for inviting things into my life that I don't want. And and once I become aware of those, try to like not give that any more energy and focus on where I'm going. So.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
All right. So the other thing that I do besides my mantras is that, and this is where it can get a little woo-woo, but
Bring it on.
I have I didn't used to believe in life after death. Let me just tell you that. And that was part of my depression, is that when my dad died, I honestly didn't think that he was anywhere.
Yeah.
And that didn't sit with me. Obviously, it was part of the depression, and part of getting out of it was being open to the idea that the people that I loved were on the other side.
Mhm.
So, I'm gonna cry here.
Mm.
So part of manifesting the things that I want to do through my businesses, the joy that I want to create for other people, is to elicit the help from my non-physical team. And, people have different ideas of what the non-physical is, right? You can call it God, you can call it your inner being, you could call it spirit, you could energy, chi, the universe, whatever it is, however you want to define it. I've found that the way that I like to define it is in ways that are familiar to me. So I have my non-physical team, and I've invited people to be on this team for me, and I believe that they are helping to like if it is true that we are here as creators, and that we get the things that we want, that we have the help of the non-physical to achieve that. So who's on my non-physical team? And this is not to say that I don't have a wonderful physical team.
Right.
Bobby, my partner, is amazing, and you are now my accountability partner, and I love that. That's been really inspirational. So I have a wonderful physical team. So my non-physical team, I've invited my parents. My parents are both deceased, and they are my biggest fans. So why not? So they are on my team. My grandparents and great-grandparents on both sides were involved in farming and ranching, and they know the work that I'm doing. So they're on my team as well. I grew up, like maybe you did, reading Little House on the Prairie. Oh my gosh, as a first and second grader, that is all I read. I read those books again and again. I wanted to be Laura Ingalls Wilder. I wanted to live her life. And it's amazing to me to think back to that, this desire to farm and to be, to live off the land and things like that was born out of those experiences with her books. So I have invited her to be on my non-physical team as well. And there's a farmer who actually lived near you, Nigel Walker from Eat Well Farms. He unfortunately passed away from cancer a few years ago, but I found some videos on YouTube of him, and man, so inspirational. I just felt really connected to him as a person. And I went and actually purchased 2 cabinet incubators. They're here in my living room. I use them every day, and they're his. They're positions that belong to him. And he's on my non-physical team. So. And I don't know, there's probably people I don't know who are on my team, but I ask them to be with me, to help me in my work. And I make sure that I'm very intentional about being very specific in asking for things that I want to have happen, and asking for their help in having that happen. And so I want to give you examples, because that might just seem
Please.
out there. So I thought of 3 examples that happened just in the last month. And these are little things. These are, I don't do a lot of advertising. I have websites, but for my farm business, that's about it. I have my website that's out there. I had a long talk with a chicken breeder. She breeds American breast chickens. She's been doing it for 8 or 9 years, really knowledgeable. And she spent 5 hours with me on the phone talking to me about my breeding program. And my takeaway from that was that I really needed to take a step back, and focus on improving some things in my breeding program. And so I just had the thought, I'm going to take a step back from that. And I had been selling lots and lots of hatching eggs and chicks. And up until that point, it was bringing in a lot of money. And as soon as I thought, I'm going to step back from it, my breeders stopped laying good eggs. They were fertile, that the eggshells were thin. I'm still don't know what the issue is. I'm working through some new feed, and I treated for mites and, did some other things to kind of like help them out, but they're on a break right now. They heard me. I don't know, but that happened like almost instantly. So that source of income dried up. I hatched out some quail. I was looking at the quail the other day in the brooder. I'm like, ooh, I have too many quail. I need to sell them. That was like 2 days ago. Yesterday, I got a call from a feed store owner saying, can you send me quail? I need them now. I got a customer who's had a quail aviary built and ready for the last 3 years. It's been ready. And she just picked up the phone and she called me and she said, I want to come get quail today. So she
Nice.
bought quail from me. And I had a couple other people contact me through email. So I don't know how to explain that. Like it seems miraculous to me. But I do feel like because I have asked for help, it's like things like that happen. So, and that's just, it happens all the time. And it makes having a business so much fun. It really does. So another example of that is like about a month and a half ago, I was scrolling through Facebook and these ads kept popping up for the Modern Homesteaders Conference in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. And I knew that like through Quail University, we need to make some connections with people in the homesteading world. And that was on the roadmap, but like way far down on the roadmap. Like we have some basic things we need to do first. But every time I saw that ad, I felt really good. Like I went, oh, like, wow, wouldn't it be cool to go there? And I just like got this warm, fuzzy feeling every time I'd see that ad pop up. And I just decided, okay, I want to do this. And I didn't have any money in the bank account except for feed money, right? To keep the animals alive. So I'm like, well, that's not going to happen that way. Couple weeks later, I made up enough sales to get a little bit of extra money, enough to pay for an airline ticket. So I thought, I'll buy these tickets. I have no idea if I can make the rest of it work, but if I have to cancel the tickets, I can use them for something else. So made that first step and then asked Quail University to pay for the entrance fee. So they did that. And then I made a phone call to my high school friend, Regina. She and her partner, we've been really close to, they live in Southern California. Regina's partner, Martha, her sister lives in Coeur d'Alene. So here's what happened. I flew to Coeur d'Alene. I got picked up at the airport, taken out to lunch. I got a free place to stay, beautiful bedroom in this gorgeous home, fed these fabulous meals. And I was given a car to go to and from the conference, which was only like about 1.5 miles away. And Regina and her partner flew up and we had a whole day to spend together with, on Sunday after the conference. And it was a blast. It was so much fun. And I'm so glad that I did that and so glad that I said yes to the good feeling, the Joseph Campbell thing, follow your bliss, right? And it'll work out. So doing more and more of that. I still don't know what the end result will be for Quail University. We made some good connections and I'm crossing my fingers, but I won't know yet, for a while if that was a good investment, but boy, was it fun. And so the universe or my non-physical team, they're making things happen for me in ways that are, if I had kind of just tried to do it on my own and thought, oh, this is going to be difficult or whatever, it may not have been as joyful of an experience. So that's one way that I think, or 3 ways that I think that asking for help from the non-physical can benefit. So
I
3
love those examples and the tangibility of that. And, wanted to kind of pull some threads to some previous things that you've said.
Okay.
You shared with us your mission statement to bring joyful experiences to yourself and to others. And then, fast forward to this experience with making these decisions around the conference, the cue that you were given to pay attention to these ads was that it felt good, right? There was a
Yeah.
joyfulness or a pleasure there.
Yeah.
And which feels very connected to that mission statement. It also feels really connected to the work that I do around intuition. I've done a lot of exploration of the system of Reiki and intuition, and how the one uplifts the other, and the importance of intuition in our lives, and how we can understand it through the lens of Reiki, and do things to intentionally build that capacity inside of ourselves. It's something that a lot of people have a lot of interest in, and you know, a lot of really poignant desire to build that sense of intuition. And one of the things that we work with, I'm actually working on an online course. So Linda mentioned being accountability buddies. So we're accountability buddies in particular around creating some self-paced online courses about Quail University and about intuition. And so that course that I'm working on really is like distilling and walking through kind of this body of work that I've put together around Reiki and intuition over the past 5 years or so. And one of the points of focus in that is learning the language of our intuition. How does our intuition speak to us? How do we know that something coming through, an impulse, an idea, a thought, a decision that we need to make? How do we know that we're being fed information through our intuition, or through some other means that information might be coming? For example, our fears, or our limiting beliefs, or stories that other people tell us about our capacities, and so on. And so finding the language of our intuition is really essential. And so what I'm hearing is, like, for you, at least in part, the language of your intuition is like pleasure, like joyful, good feelings, right? Oh,
Feelings.
it
Yeah.
felt good every time I saw that ad. And that cue was strong enough, and you trusted it well enough to put money on the table, right? To buy the airline ticket, right? I don't have the rest of this set up, but everything is always working out for me, and I have what I need. And so, and everything that I want comes easily. And so let's just go ahead and do this. I love the spaciousness of that idea that, hey, I could buy this airline ticket, but if it doesn't work out, I can put this resource somewhere else, right? The resourcefulness of that. And again, that speaks to a spacious mindset, right? Because it's like, when I'm in more fear around money, it wouldn't occur to me to, like, oh, I could use that airline ticket somewhere else. It would be like this fixed thing, like, oh, but if I can't go, then I've wasted that money, So there's, again, that spaciousness of mindset that comes through. But the other piece around working with your unseen team, this is again, part of the work with intuition, is that intuition partners. It's like our own system partnering with the world around us. And by that, I mean, some form of communication that's happening such that our attention gets drawn to the things that we need them to. Whatever that mechanism is, I'm not going to claim to know exactly, right?
Yeah.
Perhaps it is the people on our non-visible team, focusing our attention. Perhaps it's, something inside of ourselves. But whatever the case, perhaps it's a purely psychological phenomenon. But whatever the case, when we're grounded, and we're spacious, and we're connected, and we've done the work to kind of bring those things online, and to get a good sense of how our intuition talks to us, the world around us starts lighting up.
Yeah.
We start noticing what we need to notice in order to follow the thread to where we need to go. We might not know where we need to go. We might not know where that thread is leading. We might not know how the rest of the story is going to unfold, as with the conference. But you're clear, right? This is the next step. And so I can trust it, even if I don't see the rest of the path.
Yeah. And I'm learning to trust that intuition. And part of what was happening when I was depressed is I didn't trust my intuition. I have some things happen that didn't make sense to me, and they didn't. And I lost that ability to trust my own intuition. So, but getting back to what you said about, like, the way that your intuition speaks to you, for me, I'm a feeler and I feel things, but you actually helped me kind of see some of my intuition,
Mm.
because you offered, it was a couple years ago, and you offered a free Reiki session, and I took you up on
Ah,
it. I've never done Reiki, and you guys could probably tell from this conversation, I still don't know a lot about Reiki. But that experience, like, I had these very clear visions. I saw my mom, I had a conversation with her. I saw people coming to the farm. This was before we had anything to sell. We, like, it was um it, it made me realize, like, there are other ways to have intuition, and I'm starting to try to, like, be intentional about developing that creative, that visualization part of it, because you showed me, like, yeah, I could get a lot of information that way, but that's something I'm gonna have to learn. So I want to take a class when it's done.
yay. I look forward to you. Yeah, you can beta test it for me, right? Because I think I make sure it works. I love that. I love that. Yeah, so I love all of these ways that this conversation is showing how to bring together the mystical and the logistical. This is another piece that I emphasize a lot in my teaching is like we have these mystical practices that come through long-standing spiritual traditions. They have these esoteric elements. We're often encouraged to kind of separate those aspects out, right? Take time out from our life to do our spiritual practice. That happens in these spaces, in these realms. And then we go and do our life, and perhaps we're nourished by those spiritual practices, but then we go to work and we do those things. And it feels so important to me, part of reclaiming our, you mentioned earlier, birthright, right? Our birthright as humanity is to have those elements of ourselves integrated. Like there didn't used to be this differentiation between our spiritual life, our family life, our work life, our playtime, right? These things were integrated together. And it's a very modern way of thinking and being and organizing our life to have them siloed out in the way that we do.
Yeah.
And I believe that's to our great detriment. I mean, we can see that that is to our great detriment, including these moments of deep depression and apathy and loss of purpose and loss of identity when one of those areas of life changes, right? When things in our family change, things in our job changes. I see this with my clients who are retired, like recently retired, and that work piece of their life has shifted so dramatically, and they feel disconnected from their life.
Mm.
And for me, that's a symptom, what I'm observing is that that's a symptom of disintegration of these parts of ourselves.
Mhm.
And that however we define spirituality, however we define, meditative practice or, these practices that engage our full self, that integrate our full self, it's essential that we integrate them into all of the other aspects of our life. And that it doesn't have to be like a big flashy thing, right? The things that you're
Yeah.
sharing with us are simple, right? You have these three mantras that you say every day. You take time to do it, right? You do it with your whole self. You yell it as loud as you can in the car when you have that opportunity, right? You do it
Yeah.
with playfulness, right? You said it's so much fun having this team that I can, ask for help and then taking delight in seeing the unexpected ways that things end up working out for you, right? That it can be very simple uh, if we're really resting our attention on it and we're diligent in it, which is the fourth precept of the system of Reiki. Just for today, I am diligent in these things, in these ways of being, and being compassionate for ourselves and others, being grateful, being unattached to our fear and unattached to our anger.
Mm.
So I love the way that that your story and these ways of being that you've cultivated show us this blending of the mystical and the logistical and the practical ways of integrating these aspects of our life. I think it's essential that we do this, and it's essential that we see it as simple and not difficult. Right?
Yeah.
The difficulty comes in remembering to do it and being diligent. That's where it
Yeah.
becomes
Yeah.
difficult, but the
So
practices itself is not. Yeah.
Yeah, you and I have talked before about ritual and about the power of ritual, and I know that you incorporate a lot of that into your practice. So, I have limiting beliefs around money. It is hard for me to ask for money. It's hard for me to take money from people. And so I establish, this is the third thing that I do, and it involves this bell. So anytime somebody gives me money, if it's cash, it goes in a little jar, or if it's an online transaction, whatever it is, I go into the bedroom and I hit my bell and I thank that person out loud.
Nice.
And Bobby hears it and he like claps. He's like, yay. And it's changed my thinking around receiving money to having it be something joyful. And I looked up, to get ready for this conversation, I looked up the Latin root for revenue, and it's actually the word return. It's and so I feel like if you think of money as something that's being returned to you, for the energy and effort you've put out, that it belongs to me in the first place, and that it's, you know, it's not owed or whatever, like people are happy to give it to me and I'm happy to send it back out to, you know, and to purchase the things that I need to purchase. But I'm not taking money, they're returning that money to me, and I'm going to return it to somebody else whose energy and effort I appreciate. So that's the final thing that I do. I ring my bell.
I love that so much.
For
Yeah, and I love
turning.
etymology. So I love learning that about the word revenue. I didn't know that particular root of that word. And can we just take a moment to like, give a shout out of gratitude to Bobby? Like, just shout out to partners, friends, supporters, family members, neighbors who just celebrate us, right? That just want for our success and are absolutely all in on acknowledging it, right? Just
Yep, it's
being in
beautiful.
the celebration of it with us. So shout out to Bobby. We love that. And I wondered, Linda, just to close this conversation, if we circle back to your mission statement of engaging in activities that bring you joy and then that share joy with others, I'd love for you to just share something that's bringing you joy these days. What is something that is in your life in this moment that is bringing you joy in any way, in any realm?
Ah, oh, you know, the thing that's bringing me the most joy right now is that I've when I built Quail University, the Quail 101 class, I had to take a break from Quail. So I didn't have them here on the property. So they're here now. They're starting to lay. I'm getting like my first batch of eggs, of hatched eggs from that group. So I spent some time in my aviary, and this was an inspiration from Temple Grandin. So when I first, do you know who she is? She's
I
the,
do. Oh yeah.
yeah, okay. Love her. And when I had the aviary set up last year, I had a little area that was used as a brooder. It was a dog run that I put in the back. It had a door, and the quail would go back there, and they like to hang out back there. But if I went back there to collect eggs, they panicked, man. They would start popping up, even though there was a way to get out, but it was too close to me. And so they would really panic. So this year I took apart the dog run and I thought about Temple Grandin and her work with cows and getting them to move in a way that's natural for them. So I set up the dog run so that it kind of created some blinds, and it set things up kind of more in a horseshoe shape, so that if I was approaching from either end, they would naturally have 2 or 3 places to run to get out of the way and feel safe while I was back there collecting eggs. So now when I go back there, they're just like, I can feel that sense of anxiety or whatever it is. You know when your animals are feeling good and when they're not. Like, I just know that we've got this really peaceful setup now, and I've got plants in there and some really fun areas for them to play and hide and do their quail thing, and brings me a lot of joy. So thank you for asking.
I love that. And I love what a beautiful example that is of ethical animal husbandry, right? To really to let it matter that animals get to express themselves and live their lives in a way that's in alignment with their nature, and that is in alignment with what they need to feel grounded, spacious, and connected, whatever that means to in the little heart and mind of a quail. And then to take the time to rebuild systems and structures in order to accommodate that, and to do that, and then to receive the benefit of the joyfulness of watching them, live as they're meant to, and to, be in a healthier relationship with you as they feed you and you feed them. Um, I really appreciate that example. And I really appreciate this conversation. I love getting to, use this space as a way to highlight the connections of things in my life, and the way that that might hopefully inspire other people to see the connections in their lives. Friends listening, I really hope that, what I would invite you all to reflect on is, where are the places in your life that you're feeling that your spirituality or your connection to the unseen, or any practice that brings you calm and peace, anywhere you see those things as separate from other parts of your life, and to perhaps do a little bit of reflecting on how those things might come together. Perhaps you've heard an example of a strategy in this conversation that you might want to try, that you might want to integrate into your life. I welcome you to do that, and we'd love to hear back from you. If there are strategies that you are already using, places that you've been able to bring those integrations into your life effectively, we'd love for you to share that in the comments. Let this be a conversation that continues, and that continues to give us real concrete resources for making this connection in our lives. It matters. It changes the way that we feel, the way that we live our lives, the decisions we make, and the relationships that we have. So I feel inspired by this conversation. Hopefully others do too.
Thank
So
you,
Linda, is there anything that you'd like to share? We'll of course put links down below to your 3 enterprises. For folks who might want to follow any of these threads, I know Hatch at Home is a very local program to the Sacramento area, as is the selling of products from your farm. But Quail
Yeah.
University is a digital structure that can be accessed by anybody. I wonder if you'd maybe just say a little bit about how people might get in touch with that.
Okay, yeah, just quailuniversity.com. And we've got an online class that is comprehensive, Quail 101, everything from hatching out your chicks all the way up to butchering, and everything in between, feeding. There's information out there online. Some of it is not good information, as you know, like with the internet, there's like things that are true and things that are maybe like true in your context, but not everybody else's, right? So it's a place to get trusted information and to save you some time in getting set up with quail for raising quail for eggs or for meat or for both. And actually, Hatching at Home does have a program. If you happen to be a chicken breeder who wants to, or a quail breeder who wants to do a hatching rental program, we do have an online class that will help you start your own hatching rental business and do what Wendy and I do here. It is a joyful, like that business is nothing but joy. And it is super profitable too. So we've got a class to help you get started with your own business if that's something that you feel called to do.
That's so good. Yeah, we hatched out a bunch of little quail here when my kid was gosh, she must have been about 10 at the time, and it was the perfect educational but also just heartwarming activity to get to do with her during that 2020 year when she was not in school. And so yeah, really beautiful piece of education. And we didn't get into the nitty gritty of the farm enterprises, but one thing I do want to just highlight is that because of the prevalence of feelings of food insecurity that that are continuing to pop up in our communities, that quail is a form of livestock that can be kept at almost any level. If you have an apartment, if you have even a little balcony or a spare room that you can have a relatively small cage, quail can be kept in ways that are ethical, that are for well functioning in a much smaller environment than something like chickens. And so it's a really beautiful way to get a little piece of food security, and a lot of joy. They're so adorable and funny, um, in your life. So definitely check out Quail University if that tickles your fancy. And that is going to do it for our conversation today. Thanks so much, Linda, for being here. Thank you
Thanks,
for
Kelly.
doing
I'm gonna ring the
the work
bell for
you
you.
do.
Thank you.
Receive it. And friends, thank you for listening. As you go from this place, as you explore ways of bringing your spirituality and your work together in your life, may you be deeply provisioned for it. Until next time, we love you. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.